You are looking at money you did not know you had. That pile of old fence posts sitting behind your barn, cracked and graying and sinking into the earth. Most people see a disposal problem. They see lumber that has done its job and now needs to go. And they pay to have it hauled away. Sometimes they pay quite a bit. But here is what they are actually missing. And I want to walk you through the math on this one, because it changes how you see every piece of old wood on your property. I am talking about fence posts that have been in the ground for 15, 20, sometimes 30 years. They have been through seasons and storms and freeze-thaw cycles that no new wood will ever match. And when people throw them away, they are throwing away something that would take decades to replicate, not through growth, but through weathering and settling. A new fence post costs you anywhere from $8 to $20 depending on the wood species and size. But that post has never been tested. It has not been through a single winter where water got into its grain and then froze and expanded. It has not proven itself. An old fence post that has been in the ground and survived 30 years, that has already proved it can stand, that has already done the hard part. And because of that, there is a market for what you are throwing away. A market most homesteaders have no idea exists. Reclaimed fence wood sells, not for a fortune, but consistently. Salvage yards and specialty lumber dealers pay anywhere from $3 to $8 per post, depending on condition, length, and wood species. If you have 50 old posts, and a property with a half-mile of old fencing easily has that, you are looking at somewhere between $150 and $400 just sitting there. Not in salvage value, in actual immediate cash value if you know who to call. But here is where most people stop thinking about it, and that is where they lose the real money. Because fence posts are not just lumber. They are specifically seasoned lumber. They have been outside, weathered and dried by decades of sun and wind. They have settled into their final form. And in certain communities, woodworkers, builders, craftspeople, that kind of wood is worth more than new timber because it will not shift or warp the way new wood does. Barnwood, fence posts, old beams, these are what fine woodworkers actually search for. They build with them. They make tables and shelving and decorative elements. And when they do, they charge premium prices because the wood tells a story and it has already proven its durability. A custom shelf made from reclaimed fence posts will sell for 3 to 5 times what a shelf made from new lumber would cost. So when you throw away old fence posts, you are not just losing the salvage value, you are losing the opportunity cost. You could have sold them to a craftsperson or salvage dealer. You could have kept them and built something yourself. Or, and this is what I want to focus on today, you could have used them on your own property in ways that would have cost you hundreds of dollars to do any other way. Most homesteaders focus on the salvage angle. Sell the posts, pocket the cash, move on. And that is not wrong. But there is a different calculation that not many people make, and it is this. What would it cost you to hire someone to do something that old fence posts would do perfectly well? What would a contractor charge you to build a raised garden bed, a storage structure, a compost enclosure, or an animal shelter? And what would it cost in materials if you paid retail prices? A contractor will charge you anywhere from $40 to $80 an hour in most rural areas. Labor for a simple project, say building a 4x8 raised garden bed, will run you $300 to $500 by the time materials and labor are combined. And that is for new wood. If you had those old fence posts lying behind your barn, you have just eliminated $100 to $200 of that cost in materials alone. The labor is still expensive, but you can do that yourself. But here is where the real insight lives, and it is the thing I want to leave with you. Most people never connect these dots. They see old fence posts as a waste disposal problem. But a waste disposal problem is only a problem if you have to pay to get rid of it. The moment you reframe it as a resource, as free or nearly free building material already seasoned and proven, it becomes the opposite of a problem. It becomes an asset. And that reframing is the difference between a homestead that is constantly paying for solutions and a homestead that has already paid for them decades ago, just sitting there in the yard waiting to be seen clearly. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. That is nice in theory, but what do I actually do with them? And that is the real question, because having a pile of old wood is one thing. Knowing exactly how to turn it into something useful is another. So let me walk you through the projects that pay for themselves the fastest, the ones where you will feel the savings immediately. The first and fastest return is a raised garden bed. A single store-bought raised bed kit costs you somewhere between $150 and $300. The wood is thin, the corners are weak, and it will rot through in 4 or 5 years if you are lucky. Now, watch what happens when you use old fence posts instead. You take 4 posts, cut them to length, 8 feet, 4 feet, whatever matches your space. You set them level in the ground, corner them together with simple galvanized bolts or lag screws, and you have a raised bed that will outlast you. The whole thing costs maybe $12 to $20 in fasteners. That is it. And the wood was free. You were going to throw it away anyway. Here is the hard truth that nobody wants to hear. A professional carpenter charges between $60 and $80 an hour. If you call someone to build you a raised bed, you are paying $200 to $300 just in labor. You have to add the wood on top of that. And when it starts to rot, you do it all over again. But with fence posts, you do the work yourself one time, and you are done for 20 years. The second project is slightly more ambitious, but the math is even more generous. A small livestock shelter, a 3-sided shed for goats, sheep, or chickens to get out of the weather. If you go to a farm supply store and order a pre-built unit, you are looking at $800 to $1,500, depending on size. And they are frankly built cheap. The wood is green, it is thin, the roof leaks within the first heavy rain. Now build the same shelter from old fence posts. Your material cost is maybe $100, most of that going to roofing metal and fasteners. The wood is already seasoned, which means it will not shrink and warp the way new wood does. It is proven wood. It has already been outside for 10 years. It knows how to handle weather. And when you are done, you have something that will stand for another 30 years. That is a 10-to-1 return on investment, and I mean that literally. You spend $100 of actual cash money, and you have a structure that would cost you $1,000 if you bought it new. And it is better than the new one because it is built to last, not built to be replaced. The third use case is fencing itself. And this one surprises people because it feels like going in circles. These are old fence posts. Why would I use them to build new fence? The answer is simple. Because old fence posts are stronger than new ones, and they cost nothing. Most people buy pressure-treated posts for new fence, which run $5 to $8 per post. A decent-sized fence, say 200 feet around a small property, needs maybe 40 posts. That is $300 to $320 before you buy a single board or nail. But if those posts are already sitting in your yard, the cost is zero. And pressure-treated wood, while it lasts, has chemicals in it that seep into the soil. Old fence posts that have weathered naturally are cleaner and just as durable. A 200-foot fence line, built from reclaimed posts with boards you scavenge or buy at a sawmill, costs you $40 to $60 in materials. A contractor will charge you $1,500 to $2,000 to build the same fence. That is not even close. And the fence you build yourself will outlast the one the contractor builds because you will maintain it. You have skin in the game. Now here is the part that most people miss entirely. These are the obvious projects, the ones that jump out at you the moment you see a pile of old fence posts. But there are quieter uses, the ones that save you just as much money but do not feel like building projects at all. Erosion control and drainage, for example. If you have a slope on your property or a place where water pools, old fence posts can be laid horizontally and staked to create a terrace or a swale. A landscaping company charges $2 to $4 per linear foot for this kind of work. For 100 feet, that is $200 to $400. The materials? Free wood you already own and maybe $50 in stakes and spikes. Or consider pathways. A nicely edged garden path, defined by old fence posts laid end-to-end or vertically sunk as edging, costs you nothing in materials and a few hours of work. The same path, using store-bought landscape edging and professional installation, runs $500 to $800 for 100 feet. And here is something that almost no one thinks about. Fence posts make excellent storage supports. A simple lean-to storage shelter against the side of a barn or house, built from old posts and roofed with metal, costs under $200 and holds thousands of pounds of tools, equipment, or supplies. A similar-sized metal storage unit from a hardware store costs $1,200 to $1,800. But the real value is not just in any single project. The real value is in the mental shift. Once you start seeing old fence posts as a resource instead of a problem, you start seeing everything that way. That old gate that fell off its hinges? Resource. Those boards that blew off during the storm? Resource. That broken equipment nobody uses anymore? Resource. You stop throwing things away because you cannot see the use yet. You set them aside because you know the use will come. And it always does, because there is always something to build, something to fix, something to improve. And that is where the real economy lives. Not in any single project. In the habit of never thinking of something as waste until you have truly exhausted every use for it. That is how you stop losing money. And that is where the real economy lives. Not in any single project. In the habit of never thinking of something as waste until you have truly exhausted every use for it. That is how you stop losing money. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This all takes time. It takes space. It takes planning. It is easier to just call someone and pay them. And that is true. It is easier. But easier is not the same as better. And it is not the same as smarter. Because the person you call is not going to care what that fence post is worth. They are going to look at your property, give you a number, and in about 2 hours, everything you thought might be useful is going to be in a truck headed to the landfill. And you will have paid them $400 to haul away materials that you could have turned into $1,000 worth of projects over time. I have seen it happen. More than once. People do not understand what they own until it is gone. And by then, the lesson costs them. But here is what changes everything. The moment you decide to stop seeing old materials as a problem to solve and start seeing them as a solution waiting to be found. That is not just a different way of thinking. That is a different way of living. Because when you think that way, you walk around your property and you see opportunity instead of clutter. You see potential instead of waste. And you start to notice things you never noticed before. You notice that corner of the barn where old metal pieces have rusted for years. And you think about that gate you need to fix. You notice those stone fragments from when the old foundation came down, and you realize you have enough for a fire pit perimeter. You notice the broken boards from last year's storm, and you think about that tool shed you have been meaning to build. Everything on your property starts to tell you what it can become. And the money you save is real, but it is not even the biggest part of this. The biggest part is that you stop being dependent. You stop waiting for someone to approve your project through their time and their price. You stop asking permission to improve your own property. You stop thinking like a consumer, and you start thinking like a builder. And that is a kind of freedom that money cannot buy back once you have given it away. I grew up watching people build with what they had. Not because they had to, though many of them did, but because it was the normal way to think. You did not call someone to build your fence. You gathered your materials, you called your neighbors, and you built it together. And in a day, it was done. And it cost you almost nothing. And every person who helped you knew they would be able to count on you when they needed the same. That is not a luxury. That is not some quaint tradition that does not apply anymore. That is an economy that works. That is security. That is the difference between being able to improve your property and being held hostage by it, waiting for money and permission every single time something needs doing. So here is what I want you to do. The next time you take something down on your property, or the next time you see something that could be repurposed, do not automatically reach for the phone. Stop. Look at it. Really look at it. Ask yourself what it could become, instead of what you need to pay someone to take it away. And if you do not know yet, set it aside. You will figure it out, because there is always something coming that will need exactly that. Build your own inventory of possibility. Keep your materials organized and accessible. Know what you have, know where it is. And when a project comes, you will already be halfway done, because half of it is already solved. You will have the materials. You just have to know what to do with them. And that is not just cheaper. That is smarter. That is the way people who understand property think. And now you do too. Because you have seen what gets thrown away, and you know what it costs when it is gone. And you know what it becomes when someone decides it is not waste, it is only waiting. So, if you are building something on your homestead, or fixing something that broke, or trying to improve what you have without spending a fortune on contractors, you are exactly the person this channel is for. Every week, I share the hacks and the old-school solutions that save you hundreds of dollars and keep you from depending on people who do not care what your property is worth. And I have put together a complete guide, 100 DIY fixes and builds for around nothing that you can download and have sitting in your pocket the next time you need it. That link is down in the description. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next one. Turn on those notifications. And thank you for watching. I will see you next time.